and I am a health educator, trainer, and consultant with the Iris Cantor-UCLA Women's Health Education and Research Center. And let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with today's presentation. So today's topic is living well affordably during COVID-19 and beyond. Before we dive in, Jules from UCLA would like to do a quick poll with everybody. We know that these are challenging times for everyone, and there's a lot of things that we're struggling with, everything from stress, maybe having difficulty being able to afford healthy food, possibly family members getting sick, yourself getting COVID, etc. So we want to do a quick poll, just 3 questions that we'd like you to answer. And then we'll present the aggregate results. So if you could take a moment to answer the questions that appear on the screen. And these are multiple choice questions, and you can check more than one answer if more than one applies. So I'll give everybody a moment to respond. Can everyone see the, oh, it's only allowing people to check one answer. Is that right, Jules?
I wasn't aware of that, but I guess it is only letting us do one. So I guess for everyone, if you can choose which one applies to you the most for this poll.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Jules, are you seeing answers coming in? Because I'm not. You are, okay.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
We'll give about 15 more seconds for people to answer, and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay, so on your screen, you should see the results for this first poll.
Yes, so it looks like 11% said not being able to get enough medical care when it's needed. 56% said exercising less. That makes sense since gyms have been closed for the most part. And then 33% said my physical health has stayed the same. So that's good news that a third of you have not had any additional health challenges, physical health challenges due to the pandemic. Okay, so let's move on to the second question. Thank you for answering.
And for this poll, for everyone, you should be able to mark multiple answers. We'll give about 10 more seconds for this one.
Okay, so as you know, this question was due to the pandemic, my emotional or mental health has been impacted by. It looks like 44% of people said more stress, 22% said depression, 67% said anxiety. Wow. 22% grief or loss due to losing a loved one, 56% said feelings of loneliness and isolation, and 22% said my emotional or mental health has stayed the same. So yeah, it sounds like more people are struggling with their mental and emotional health than their physical health. And the fact that 67%, more than half, are struggling with anxiety, that's very, very concerning, but understandable just given the collective trauma that we're all going through, and the feelings of loneliness and isolation can contribute to that anxiety. And definitely that percentage was very high. Thank you for responding. We just have one more question that Jules will now put up on the screen.
We'll give about 10 more seconds for this one.
Okay, thank you for answering. This question, since the pandemic started, I have improved the following health habits. We wanted to recognize that, it's not all challenge, that sometimes we do actually improve with situations like this. So 33% report eating healthier, 11% are exercising more, 44% are taking more vitamins and supplements, or taking vitamins and supplements, 22% are getting more sleep. Nobody said they're coping with stress by doing practices like meditation, yoga, or deep breathing. And 44% said I have not improved my health habits. So almost half. So congratulations to those of you who have improved your habits to support your mental and physical health. And that's what we're going to be talking about more today, is in addition to how to live well affordably, we're going to be talking about a few different recommendations for how to stay healthy, both physically and mentally during COVID and beyond. This is part of a UCLA project called Women's Health and Money at Work. And so what our objectives are for today is we're going to learn how to include fruits and vegetables in any budget, how to stretch your food budget, how to save money with coupons and other community resources, how to stay healthy during COVID-19, and how to exercise on a budget, as well as how to reduce stress through self-care. Before we get started with this agenda, I just want to ask one other quick question if people can answer in the chat. And as we go through the presentation, feel free to post questions in the chat box, or because we are a fairly small group today, you can also unmute yourself and feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation, especially if there's something I said that maybe isn't clear or you have a follow-up question related to it. So I do want it to be interactive rather than me just talking at you as much as possible. And so I do want to ask if people can type into the chat and say what made you decide to join this webinar today. So just, a couple words, doesn't have to be anything very long, but what inspired you, what motivated you, or made this topic interesting for you? I'm seeing somebody said education. Losing weight. Education, in other words, to learn more. Anyone else? Okay. So I also want to mention that we will have a follow-up coaching session, and Jules, did the financial literacy portion of this project already happen for the English group?
No, so the financial literacy will be on Thursday at the same time, Thursday at 2 p.m. I will be sending out an email about that one.
Okay, great. So there will be the financial literacy component of this project. Today we're focused more on eating on a budget as well as staying healthy. And after the financial literacy, there will also be a more individualized coaching session where you have the opportunity to ask questions of myself and Erica, who's the person who will lead the financial literacy portion of it, so that you can get more individualized recommendations to help you out. So we all know that eating a healthy diet is super important, and there's many different reasons why. Here's a few of the most critical ones. And the first one I highlighted in red because this is one of the things that we're so concerned about during this pandemic is our immune system being able to stay healthy and fight off the coronavirus. Or if we do get COVID, it not being a very severe case, because as we know, some people get just mild symptoms, other people may be more moderate and others severe. And a lot of that has to do with not just the underlying conditions like diabetes or heart disease or obesity, but sometimes it's also related to the immune system and how strong or balanced the immune system is. And we're going to talk later on in the presentation about some of the specific foods that you can eat to support your immune system. Of course, eating healthy provides us with more energy. If we're eating a lot of junk food, a lot of empty calories, it's not going to provide the fuel that our body needs to function well. It helps us maintain a healthy weight, helps us reach and maintain a healthy weight, improves our fitness, improves our focus and ability to concentrate. As an example, when we're eating a lot of sugar or maybe refined carbs, sometimes we may struggle with, because our blood sugar is not always in balance, and we end up having what I like to call the sugar roller coaster, where you have highs and lows, and that can affect our focus and concentration, or maybe even give us something called brain fog, where we just kind of feel a little bit, foggy, or like we can't really concentrate or focus as well. Of course, eating a healthy diet provides all of the vitamins and minerals that our body needs, or most of the vitamins and minerals our body needs. Sometimes supplements are needed for various reasons. And of course, it helps prevent chronic diseases, and that could be anything from diabetes, from heart disease, and really every chronic disease, and even communicable diseases like we're seeing with COVID are related to how healthy a diet we follow. So you've probably all seen this graphic before. That's from the US Department of Agriculture. My Plate, choosemyplate.gov is where you can find a lot more information. And back in the day, very long time ago, we used to have the 4 food groups, and then it became the food guide pyramid, and now we have Choose My Plate. And the more research is conducted and the more we learn, the recommendations from the US Department of Agriculture change a bit. And so the current recommendations are that we make half our plate fruits and vegetables. You may remember from the food guide pyramid that the base of the pyramid was grains. And now we know that's really not what the majority of what we should be eating. Yes, we do need to eat some grains, or most people, benefit from eating grains, but really it should not be the majority. Fruits and vegetables are what most people don't eat enough of, in particular vegetables. And we'll get into that a little bit further. And then of course, about a quarter of protein. And dairy, I like to think of that as an individualized thing, because some people do well with dairy and others don't. A large percentage of the population has lactose intolerance. And so you don't necessarily have to have a glass of milk or dairy with every meal. Like, again, it depends on how well you do with it, but what is necessary is lots of water. And so who can tell me what the recommendation is in terms of how much water to drink a day? You can either unmute yourself or pop it into the chat. 8 glasses. Yes, that's the general recommendation, and that's about right for the majority of the population. A more individualized recommendation is to drink half your weight in ounces. So in other words, a person who weighs 200 pounds should ideally drink 100 ounces of water a day, although it doesn't have to all be water, because other fluids that we drink can count toward the amount that we need on a daily basis. So for example, right now I'm having some green tea, so that counts toward my fluid intake. If you're having coffee, that counts. So what we do want to avoid, of course, is that those fluids be sugar sweetened beverages like soda or sports drinks or energy drinks, and even juice. It used to be that we would recommend that people drink juice, but now we know that it's really very high in sugar, and it's much better to eat the fruit itself versus fruit juice. How to include fruits and vegetables in your budget? One recommendation is to try to buy fruits that are in season, fresh fruits that are in season, because they tend to be more affordable, and they actually taste better, and they sometimes even have a higher level of nutrition. What happens is that in our modern world, we pretty much have access to most fruits and vegetables year round, but that isn't the way it was, in times past. People ate what was in season, what they were able to harvest. But because we now are able to import things from all over the world, we tend to have whatever we want at the grocery store, depending, of course, on what grocery store you shop at. But the point is that what's in season is cheaper because it's usually more local, so it didn't have to make that long trip to get to the store where you shop. And when it's local, it tends to be fresher because, again, it didn't make that long trip. And when fruits and vegetables have to be imported from a long distance, they tend to be picked before they're fully mature. And so that's why they may not taste as good as something that's local and in season. And remember that some fruits and vegetables won't last long. So for example, a head of cabbage is going to last much longer than some spinach. And so it's important to keep that in mind when you're shopping, and the things that tend to go bad more quickly, buy smaller quantities of those, so that you don't end up throwing things away and wasting some of your money. I think that it's super important to plan your meals before you go to the grocery store. How many of you do that? Just pop into the chat if you meal plan before going to the grocery store. No one? Okay, I see one yes. It's really a good habit to get into. Another person is saying I do. Yeah, because I saves me money. Yeah, exactly. Somebody said I have a list. Yes. Make a list and never shop hungry. That's also a very, very good suggestion. Yeah, when we go to the grocery store and we're hungry, we tend to buy a lot of things that we maybe would not have purchased. And same thing goes when we don't plan, because I know that I find that sometimes if I go without a list, I come back with things that I already had in my pantry. So it's also important to kind of do an inventory of what you have in your refrigerator and your pantry, and see what you need to stock up on, and plan the meals that you're going to make, and make a list of the ingredients you're going to be needing for that. It also goes a very long way in terms of sticking to healthier food. I know somebody mentioned that the reason they wanted to attend the workshop was to lose weight. And so if that's your goal, then meal planning, it's a really key part of that. And then it's also helpful to choose items that are affordable most of the time, things like beans, carrots, greens, potatoes, apples, and bananas. And then you can also plan meals that specifically will help stretch your budget. So in the next slide, we'll see an example of that. So things like stews, casseroles, and soups can be much more affordable or easy on the budget, because then you're not only are do you tend to include a lot more vegetables in those dishes, but you don't have to include as much meat. So for example, if you're making a chicken soup, the chicken that you use for that is going to go much further. It's going to stretch much further than if you're making, let's say, a chicken breast for every person in your household. So that's another way to save money. When you go grocery shopping, I think it's a good idea to focus on what's in the perimeter of the market in order to try to eat as much real whole food as possible, as opposed to processed food, because what's around the perimeter, or the outside of the store, I mean, I don't mean literally outside, but around the outside edges, the outer edges, are fruits and vegetables, meats, dairy, all of those foods that are unprocessed, whereas in the individual aisles that you walk down, most of that is packaged and processed. So it's not necessarily as nature made it. And so focusing on the perimeter is a good idea for healthy eating. And then, I'm not saying don't buy anything that's processed, but when you do, it's important to compare the unit price rather than just looking at the total price. So the example we have on the screen here is for yogurt. The top container costs us $1.62, whereas the other one costs 72 cents. Now, in this case, they are obviously different sizes, but it is always important to check the unit price, because sometimes they are the same size, and yet, well, when they're different sizes, it's when it's harder to tell. So the top yogurt is 5 cents per ounce, whereas the bottom one is 12 cents per ounce. And so somebody might think, okay, I'll buy the 72-cent one, but you're really saving money by buying the larger container, since it's only 5 cents per ounce. And it's also a good idea to buy the generic, because that's often less expensive than brand names. People sometimes think that it's going to be a better quality when it's a brand name, but that's not necessarily true. So buying generic is a great way to save yourself a little bit of money. Another thing that can be somewhat of a myth for people is that fresh is always better in terms of fruits and vegetables, but frozen can be not only less expensive, but sometimes the quality is just as good or even higher. Again, I was talking earlier about the importing of fruits and vegetables from other countries, or whatever distance, or even this country, but another state or what have you. And so as it's being imported, well, not only is it not necessarily harvested at the peak of ripeness, but it may be traveling a long distance, and by the time we buy it, we really don't know how long it's been since it was harvested. And as time goes on, fruits and vegetables start to lose some of the nutrients. Whereas with frozen, it tends to be flash frozen right when it was harvested, and so it maintains the nutritional value a little bit more. And a great example of how it could be less expensive is blueberries. When you buy blueberries fresh, they tend to be pretty pricey. Like for a small little basket, it might be, for something. Whereas if you buy a whole bag of frozen blueberries, it could be even less than that, and yet the quantity is greater. I'm seeing somebody asked in the chat they'd like to know if frozen vegetables are as good, healthy as fresh vegetables. Yes, that's what I was just explaining, that they are just as good or about the same. So, it's hard to know exactly, because what's fresh, like I was saying, you don't know how long it's been sitting on the shelf, or you don't know how far it had to travel to get to the grocery store where you're buying it. And then sometimes we buy it fresh, and then it goes into our refrigerator, and then we don't cook it or eat it quickly, and then it's sitting there for several days or a week or what have you. Whereas if it's frozen, it's maintaining that nutritional value a little bit more, because it, the nutrients are staying in place when it's frozen. I hope that answered the question. Okay, now when somebody's asking, or the same person asks, what's the difference between canned and frozen vegetables? So fresh and frozen are the best option. Canned that's when it's going to lose more of the nutritional value, not to mention that there's a few other things of concern when it comes to canned fruits and vegetables. So as you can see here, we recommend that if you're going to buy canned fruits, they be in 100% juice, because sometimes they're packaged or they're canned with a lot of sugar or syrup. And so that's adding a lot of grams of sugar to the item. We're not concerned so much about the naturally occurring sugar in the fruit itself, but from the sugar added in the syrup. And then when it comes to vegetables, they often use sodium or salt as a preservative. And so they can be very high in salt. So if you're going to buy canned, it's best to choose low sodium or no salt added. In addition to that, the can itself usually contains BPA in the lining, and that's a chemical that can be toxic. So ideally you want to buy fresh or frozen and limit canned items. Sometimes, I'm not saying don't ever buy canned. Sometimes it is convenient. If you are going to buy, for example, like canned beans or things like that, it's important to rinse them to try to remove whatever chemicals and the extra salt or sodium that they're canned in. You wouldn't do that with fruit, but that's why you want to buy canned fruit. If you're going to buy canned fruit, that's packaged in 100% juice instead. And then prepping meals, we talked about planning, but prepping meals is a great way to save time and money. So by either batch cooking, like if you're making, let's say chicken soup, or you're making beans or rice or something like that, is making an extra portion. So you have enough for another day or maybe even another couple days. And you can also freeze, if you're making an extra large batch, you can freeze some and save it for maybe the following week. Some people meal prep on Sundays and they make all of their meals for the whole week. Other people might make a few meals. So for example, I'm in the habit of eating hard-boiled eggs for breakfast. And so on Sunday nights, I'll make a batch that'll last me like 3 days or so, and then I don't have to make them each morning. And so that's very practical way. Another thing that you can do to as your veggies are maybe starting to go a little bit bad is, or not bad because you don't want them to let them go bad, but like if you've had them for a while or you have leftover vegetables from something else that you made, add them to casseroles or soups. And then very ripe fruit works really well in smoothies or for baking. Using coupons is another practical way to save some money. I recommend that if you're going to use coupons, you use them for products that you use regularly or that you would normally buy, because sometimes we get all these coupons in the mail and we're enticed by, oh, look at this is a great deal. It's 50% off with this coupon. But if it wasn't something that you were going to use or that you use regularly or that you normally would have purchased, then maybe you're actually spending money that you wouldn't have. So look out for coupons that are for the products that you normally buy, and look for them in unexpected places. on the back of the receipt. Sometimes there's a coupon on the actual package of a product that we buy for the next time we purchase it, or on supermarket shelves. And of course, you know, with the Sunday paper, I don't know how many people still get Sunday paper since we tend to do everything online these days, or just simply coupon inserts that get mailed to you. So those are great places to look out for some deals on the things that you normally purchase. And then of course, there are different resources available for people with lower limited incomes to be able to access more food. And that's especially the case during the pandemic. So CalFresh, which used to be called food stamps, WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children, the Supplemental Nutrition Program for pregnant women, postpartum women, and infants and children up to age 5, offers products that are specific for the nutritional needs of those populations, or of those stages in life, I should say. And then we have lots of food banks, and as I mentioned, there's even more since the pandemic. I know that in my community, at least 2 have shown up in my city where I live that didn't exist before the pandemic. And what's nice about food banks is a lot of them, especially these new ones that came up because of the pandemic, don't even have any requirements related to income or nothing that you have to verify. Whereas with CalFresh and WIC, it is based on your income. And of course, well, with CalFresh, it's more of an application process that's a little bit more complex than WIC. WIC, a lot of it, you do have to provide income, but it's generally self-reported, but you do have to provide blood work from the doctor. Usually you do. I don't know if that's changed with the pandemic, to be quite honest. Any questions about any of what I've been covering? Anything you'd like me to expand on? Okay, so then let's move into staying healthy during COVID. Still focusing on nutrition. As I touched on in the beginning, eating a healthy diet is important to keep our immune system strong because specific nutrients can really contribute to that, whereas other foods may harm the immune system. So let's take a look at what can actually help us. Eating a diet that includes lots of different colors of fruits and vegetables is important, which is why I'm sure you've heard the expression eat the rainbow. And that's because the color from each different item reflects different types of nutrients that are necessary for the body to function optimally. And I really want to emphasize greens because, and not just any type of green vegetable, but leafy, dark leafy greens are probably the most important vegetable to include in the diet because they're a powerhouse of nutrition. They include almost every nutrient that's needed by the body with the exception of B12, because B12 generally comes from animal products, so like meat and dairy. But greens are something that people don't eat enough of, or sometimes if they do, they're eating maybe iceberg lettuce, whereas that does not have very much nutrition at all. So spinach, kale, chard, bok choy, arugula, all of those are really important to eat on a frequent basis. And sweets, particularly sugar, processed food, is what weakens the immune system. So I've seen research that indicates that when you eat something that's very high in sugar, like let's say a donut, that your immune system is suppressed for 5 hours afterwards. And so that's not something that we can afford during this time of the pandemic. So choosing healthy food, especially lots of fruits and veggies, is super important all the time, but especially now. The other thing to include more of in the diet is healthy fats. For a very long time, we demonized fats and there was a low-fat eating craze. And we've learned that that was not, that wasn't so accurate, that we need to avoid fat because fat is actually very important for many different reasons. It's a matter of choosing healthy fats. And so the foods you see here, like salmon, especially wild salmon, sardines, olive oil, olives, avocado, nuts, and seeds. Eggs also provide us with healthy fats, in particular omega-3 fatty acids. And that's super important in terms of our cholesterol makeup, because we have both good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. That's kind of an oversimplification, but it's an easy way to understand it. And the good cholesterol, HDL, actually helps eliminate the bad cholesterol, and it helps protect our heart. It's good for brain health, and it's actually good for vision as well. And a large percentage of the population has low HDL. And so including more healthy fats in the diet is a great way to protect your health, and it contributes to a strong immune system. And then fiber is also critical for overall health as well as the immune system. In fact, the majority of your immune system, about 70% of it, is in the gut. So when I'm referring to the gut, I mean like the stomach and the intestines. And so we have what's called the gut microbiome, which consists of the bacteria, viruses, and lots of different organisms that inhabit our gut. And we sometimes think of that as something we need to get rid of, or something that's bad. But just like we have good and bad cholesterol, we have good and bad bacteria. And it's important to have the right balance, especially of the beneficial gut bacteria. And so eating lots of fiber-rich foods helps feed that healthy bacteria. So I'm sure everybody's heard a lot about probiotics. That's something else that can help feed the good bacteria, or not feed it, that provides, probiotics are the good bacteria, but we can also eat prebiotic foods which feed the good bacteria. So things like apples, jicama, bananas, there's lots of foods that are considered prebiotic. And then probiotic foods, if you're not going to take a probiotic supplement, also help. So anything that's fermented, like sauerkraut, or just fermenting vegetables, is a really good idea in terms of supporting your immune system. Kimchi, thank you. Yes, that's another important one, definitely. Kimchi is super healthy for the gut. So in many cultures, there's different. In the Latino culture, we have curtido. However, the way it's often made is not necessarily beneficial for the gut, because they use vinegar, and so you want to ferment it without vinegar if you make curtido. But kimchi, definitely. So we're going to now move into talking about how to clean and disinfect in a way that protects us from the virus, but at the same time doesn't harm our health further, because there's been so much fear about the virus. And so people are going a little bit overboard in terms of using very toxic and very harsh chemicals, in particular Clorox, but even overusing sanitizers and what have you. And so definitely want to protect ourselves, but it's important to understand that any type of soap has been shown to kill the coronavirus. So that's why washing your hands very frequently is very important, and doing it with soap and for a good length of time. The recommendation is wash them during the time that you would it would take you to sing happy birthday twice. And when you're cleaning at home, whatever surface, again, any type of soap will kill the virus. And then for disinfecting, because what's recommended is that you clean to remove whatever dirt is on the surface, but then you use some form of disinfectant to get rid of the bacteria. But Clorox or bleach is not necessary. We can do that in a safer way by using hydrogen peroxide that's 3%. And the type that you buy at the store generally is already going to be 3%. So there's no need to dilute it. And so you can just use that to disinfect the surfaces after you've cleaned them. So any questions around this, because there may be some confusion or people have maybe weren't already aware of this. So any questions? No questions. Okay. Whoops, did I go too far? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about moving your body and the benefits of being more physically active. First, for the body itself, it helps us to keep or to get to and keep a healthy weight. It helps keep our bones, our muscles, and our joints healthy, as well as helps build more muscle. It helps prevent and fight diseases. So getting plenty of physical activity, movement, or exercise, however you want to refer to it, is also important for our immune system. And it also helps us sleep better. So when we exercise, we may struggle less with insomnia or sleep issues. But it's not just good for the body, it's also good for the mind. It can lower stress. And a high percentage of you said that you've been feeling more stressed since the pandemic. And yet I think there was a high percentage of people said they were exercising less since the pandemic. And so it's important to work toward getting more exercise, not just for your physical body and for your immune system, but also to lower the stress and help you relax. It also improves the mood. And that's because when we exercise, we release endorphins, which are kind of feel-good hormones, or also dopamine. And it can help us focus better. The amount of exercise that's recommended is at least 30 minutes, 5 days per week. But I always say, start with baby steps. If you're not exercising at all right now, at least start with 10 minutes. Because 30 minutes may feel like a lot, or it may feel like you just don't have that time. And so then we don't exercise at all. It's much better to start to do 10 minutes of exercise than to not do anything. And you can either do moderate or you can do vigorous exercise, or a combination of the two. And so examples of moderate exercise are walking, bicycling, dancing. Bicycling can be vigorous as well, though, depending on how you're doing it, how intensely you're doing it. Running, heavy yard work, swimming are examples of more vigorous exercise. The other thing that isn't shown here that is really a recommendation as well is to include strength training at least twice a week, because that's what's going to be even more effective in building muscle, as well as boosting metabolism. So in terms of weight management, including strength training is very important. And you don't have to use weights, so you can do lots of different body weight exercises, and or you can use resistance bands. But if you have free weights, then that is also a great way to go. There's lots of different things that can get in the way of exercise. The most common thing that I hear is lack of time, but we may think that we don't have the resources for a gym membership, or I don't have enough money to buy exercise equipment, or, you know, the most common reason that people lack time is because they're juggling so many different things, the job and kids and family and household and whatever else. Or there could be a lack of motivation, or maybe you don't know how to get started, you're not very experienced, or what have you. But really, you don't need to go to a gym to exercise, and you don't need any sort of fancy equipment. You can simply walk in the park, you can walk in your neighborhood, you can exercise at home. And so there are so many different options in terms of exercising at home, everything from a gazillion YouTube videos that with every type of exercise imaginable, to lots of different exercise apps. And pretty much gyms have become virtual, so you can take, you can even do yoga online or virtually through your yoga studio or what have you. But again, you don't even need to do that because you can exercise so many different ways at home virtually with videos, or just creating your own routine. If you do have free weights, that's great. Or even just, like I said, walking around your neighborhood, or even walking around your home. And you can use simple household items as a convenient way. You can use a chair the way you see there to do dips. You can use a jump rope to do some cardio. You can climb stairs. In fact, you can also, you can do some gardening if you have a garden. If not, there's lots of different community gardens that might be in your neighborhood. Go on a walk as a family. And then make it a point to increase your daily steps. So when we think of exercise, we think of like carving out those 10 minutes or 15 or 30 minutes or what have you, but it's also a matter of how much you're simply moving throughout the day. And so that's why a lot of people aim for a certain number of steps, like let's say 10,000 steps a day. However, if right now you're only getting about 2,000 or 3,000, then I wouldn't aim for 10,000, because like I said before, it's easier to meet your goal if you take baby steps. And so if right now you're only getting about 3,000 steps a day, then make your goal to increase to 4,000 or 5,000, and then keep building from there. Because it's important to have big goals, but if you set your goals too high or they're unrealistic and you don't achieve them, then you can become discouraged. Whereas if you set a small goal and you achieve it, that builds your confidence and motivates you to keep going. So some ways to increase your steps is to walk to nearby places if at all possible. When you do drive, park further away instead of doing what most people do, which is kind of trying to find the closest possible parking spot to the door, and sometimes even fighting with other cars or other people to get it. Take the stairs whenever possible instead of the elevator. So those are some great ways to increase your steps. And there's lots of great apps for tracking as well, or just simply using your phone or whatever other device. But that's not necessary. You can even use just a very, very simple basic pedometer. So now let's transition into reducing stress through self-care. Again, it looks like from what people said in the poll that stress is really affecting a lot of people, and it can affect both your physical and your emotional health. So stress is associated with pretty much all chronic diseases, or not even just chronic. Again, going back to the COVID-19, it can affect your immune system. It can suppress your immune system, and it can affect your emotional health. And so a few ways to reduce stress, aside from the exercise that I emphasized earlier, is you can do some self-care, like take a warm shower or a bath, especially maybe a bubble bath with some lavender oil or some Epsom salts are great for reducing stress. Try aromatherapy, again, with lavender oil or whatever fragrance you like, but make it, if possible, pure essential oil, not synthetic fragrances, because those can have harmful chemicals. Call a friend and talk to somebody. Read a book that you like or enjoy. Take a walk outside. Listen to a music or a podcast. Do some stretching. Stretching is really important, especially for those of you who are maybe working from home, and it's become kind of a trend where working from home, it's great to have that opportunity, but perhaps you're sitting in front of the computer for even more hours than you did when you went to a job. And so then we start to hold a lot of tension in our body, especially if we're stressed and trying to meet a lot of deadlines or what have you. So it's important to take stretch breaks throughout the day, whether that's getting up and doing some stretches, or even while you're sitting is doing some neck rolls, or even some twisting in the chair. There's lots of different things you can do to just kind of relax those muscles so the stress and tension doesn't accumulate and end up giving you neck pain or shoulder pain or back pain. Do a hobby that you enjoy, learn something new. And then meditation. I know in the poll we asked about any sort of practices to reduce stress or to relax, and it seemed nobody is doing something. So I really want to emphasize how beneficial meditation is, and it's beneficial not just as stress reduction, but also to have a more clear and focused mind, also for health, really, because when we are stressed, it can impact our physical health. And for brain health, to maintain a kind of a sharp mind and a good memory, meditation helps with all of that and more. There's just tons of research these days touting all of the benefits of meditation, and there's lots of different ways to meditate. If you're a beginner, if it's not something that you already have experience with, it's good to start with guided meditation. And the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center offers free guided meditations. So if you scan, I don't know if that would work right now. Jules, do you know if, like, because I know that if they scan this, I don't know if it's called a barcode or what it's called, but it'll take you directly to the,
It should work. Yes,
it should work. Okay.
Should work.
And Jules is going to send out the presentation so you can do it from there as well. It's working. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you for testing it and verifying that it is working. So there's great guided meditations on that site that are very effective. I know that for LA County residents, since the pandemic, there's also free access to Headspace. I believe that's the app, the meditation app that's available for free during the pandemic. I believe it's been extended because I know that started in 2020, but I believe it's still available to LA County residents. So I'd really encourage you to give meditation a try because it's very beneficial. And just like I was talking earlier, you don't have to become an expert meditator overnight. It's about baby steps. So starting with 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. And the thing that I think people struggle with the most is they say, well, I just can't clear my mind. You know, I have all these thoughts coming up, but it's not about clearing your mind because the mind is designed to think. It's about continually refocusing, and that's why guided meditations can be easier because you're listening to what they're saying and it gives you a point of focus. But other types of meditation are about focusing either on the breath or a mantra, and your mind is going to wander. That's fine. It's okay. Don't judge yourself for it. It's about just continuing to bring the focus back to your breath or your mantra. And deep breathing is another great way to reduce stress. Somebody is saying align chakras. Yeah, I'm a huge chakra person, and in fact, I meditate each morning, and I do a meditation where I focus on sending energy to all my chakras. And maybe that's too much information, but anyhow, deep breathing is another good way to reduce stress because it calms the nervous system down. And there's lots of different deep breathing techniques, but the most basic thing you can do is deep belly breathing. So breathing in through the nose to a count of 4. And as you fill your belly with air, and then breathing out through the mouth as you contract your belly. And you can do that to a count of 4 on each, or even better is inhale to a count of 4 and exhale to a count of 8. So when you double the time on the exhale, it has an even more calming effect on the body. And then lastly, yoga is a very effective way to reduce stress. It's also great for balance. It's great for flexibility. It's kind of like strength training, and you get some benefits of strength training. And depending on the type of yoga you do, there can even be some cardio benefits. So it's such a great thing to do all the way around for your mind and body. So that is my last slide, I believe. Yes. So any other questions on anything that I've covered in today's presentation?
How many times do you recommend the deep breathing exercises?
That's a great question. So I like to recommend that people do something called habit stacking. When you're trying to start change a habit, it's a good idea to pair the new habit with an existing habit. So when it comes to deep breathing, you know, I don't have like a set number of times that I would recommend. I think it really depends on the person and what their level of stress is and what's going to work for them in terms of changing the habit. But as I was saying, it helps to pair the new habit with something else. So for example, maybe every time you go to the restroom, take an extra minute to do a couple of rounds of deep breathing. Or maybe every time you get up to refill your water bottle, take the time to do some deep breathing. And certainly, so that it becomes part of your daily practices. But I would absolutely also recommend that you do it when you're feeling stressed. So if you're, and part of managing your stress is about listening to your body and noticing stress in your body, how you feel it, where you feel it, because some people may feel it as like that nervous feeling in their stomach, whereas somebody else might feel it like in their shoulders and they're starting to tense up, or some people get headaches. And so it's a good idea to start really noticing the early warning signs that you're feeling stressed, or maybe shallow breathing, which is why doing deep breathing is a good idea, because when we're in fight or flight, our breathing becomes more rapid and shallow. And so if you're starting to notice stress in your body, or you're really worried or nervous about something, then that's the time to do the deep breathing to help your nervous system relax. I see, okay, somebody else is saying thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Somebody said, thank you, great presentation. You're welcome. It was my pleasure. And I just want to reiterate that we will have the drop-in session for you all to attend, to be able to ask any other individual questions. And so we can provide you more personalized support, whether it's on health or financial literacy. And Jules, can you remind us when that is scheduled for? Let's see if I can find it really quickly.
It's next Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'll send
Okay.
another reminder about that as well.
Okay, awesome. So it's exactly at the same time next week. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. I hope you can make it. And